of President Trump, who wrote this on Truth Social today, quote, Thomas Massie is a grandstander, and the great people of Kentucky are going to be watching a very interested primary in the not-too-distant future. We are joined now by Texas Republican Congressman Chip Roy. Congressman, thanks so much for being on the show.
Good afternoon, Casey.
So what is your message to your Republican colleagues who may still be on the fence, and to Congressman Massie, who has said he's a no on this bill?
Yeah, well, first of all, Thomas is a great friend. And, having been the recipient of some similar tweets, the sun comes up tomorrow and, we'll all be moving forward to try to deliver what we came to Washington to do for our constituents. And I think that's what Thomas does every day. That's what I do every day. And this one, I just disagree with Thomas. I think that where we are at this moment, where we've got the president in the White House, we've got Russ Vought at OMB and Elon and Doge doing what they're doing, we have the opportunity to have this administration do what we've been asking to be done for a long time, which is actually root out the waste, fraud, and abuse, the ridiculous expenditures, identify them, and do the job that the American people sent us here to do in November. Importantly, a CR for 6 months. And again, I'm not a huge fan of CRs, but I've never ruled them out either. This kind of differentiates me from both ends of the political spectrum in my conference. Where they're strategically beneficial, I'm for them. I never found them that strategically beneficial under the Biden regime because I didn't agree with what Joe Biden was doing. But here, I generally agree with what President Trump is doing. Freeze spending, freeze it at roughly 2024 levels. In fact, it's a $7 billion reduction. Get rid of earmarks. Make sure the defense spending doesn't get bloated up to be used to gross up the entire expenditure, and then keep the lights on to allow Doge to do what they're doing, Russ and OMB to do what they're doing, and then let's focus on FY26 because the clock is running out. We only have 6 months left to deal with FY26. So I think we're in a good spot to do it. Remember, don't mean to filibuster here, but my Senate, colleagues, my Democrat friends over in the Senate, they didn't pass a single appropriation bill for this cycle. We passed 5 off the floor, 12 out of committee, and we got jammed up by them. So we're trying to clean up the mess and move forward.
Congressman, I want to ask you, you talk about Doge and the efforts that you say that you are supportive of. Elon Musk did an interview yesterday with Fox Business where he talked about entitlements, and I want to play a little bit of that interview that he did and then ask you about it on the other side. Let's watch.
The waste report in entitlement spending, which is which is most of the federal spending is entitlements. That's like the big one to eliminate, because that's the sort of $500 billion, maybe $700 billion a year.
Congressman, would you be supportive of Elon Musk doing what he said he was going to do in that interview, which is cut entitlements, essentially?
So put it in context of what he was actually talking about. First of all, he said $700 billion. That is a tiny fraction of the total amount. And why? Because what he's talking about is eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. He's been identifying duplicate
the entire cost of Medicaid is basically what he was saying there, that $700 billion number. It's not the $500 million that many people say is often the number for Medicare or Medicare Advantage.
Keep in mind, but Casey, keep in mind what's happening here. We are now dealing with the expansion population under Obama, where able-bodied individuals are getting a 90% federal funding compared to the vulnerable and the elderly and the sick who are only getting 50 to 75% because Obamacare was structured in a bad way. You have enormous amount of fraud under Medicaid. You have illegal aliens getting Medicaid. You have California gaming Medicaid in order to get money.
Do you really think there's $700 billion worth of fraud and waste in Medicaid? $700 billion? I mean, it's the cost of the whole thing.
Okay, well, Casey, let me give you a number that might mean something. The 2021 CBO budget baseline compared to the 2025 CBO budget baseline, a $1.2 trillion increase. Significant amounts of that is waste, fraud, and abuse. Significant amounts of that is illegal aliens. Significant amounts of that are able-bodied citizens as compared to the vulnerable. That's what we need to sort out.
Do you think you can cut $700 billion without touching law-abiding American citizens who are entitled to their benefits under Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid? I mean, do you think that's really possible in these programs? $700 billion with a B?
Yeah, well, first of all, remember that we've gone from $4.5 trillion of spending, Casey, in 2019 to $7 trillion in 2025. We've identified $1 trillion in improper payments. That means money that's going to the wrong people and money that's going in the wrong amounts. There is plenty of us to be able to go find the waste, fraud, and abuse, make sure it's going to the right people. But again, I'm being very specific. I actually believe in work requirements. Most Americans do it. Polls at like 80%. You should work if you're able-bodied, and then these are the kinds of ways that you can save money. And Elon was just simply saying, and not just in Medicaid, but broadly, when you have duplicate Social Security numbers, where you have known fraud in Medicaid and Medicare, Medicare. I worked in the Attorney General's office in Texas, and the Medicaid fraud division there was very busy because of so much fraud. We can do a better job getting the actual dollars to the people who are supposed to get them under the programs, like the vulnerable under Medicaid.
Yeah. President Trump, of course, on the campaign trail said over and over and over and over again that he's not going to cut Social Security and he's not going to cut Medicare. Where are you on this? I mean, do you stand with the president on that? Do you stand with what Elon Musk is apparently saying here?
Well, again, let me be clear about what Elon's saying. He's saying find the waste, fraud, and abuse, the duplication, and those things that you can find in the.
But that's not what he. I mean, that's not what he's saying. I just want to know, like, are you with President Trump on cutting Medicare and Social Security, on not doing that?
But to be clear, that is what Elon was talking about. And on Social Security, under what we're going to deal with in terms of reconciliation, we're legally not allowed to talk about Social Security, touch Social Security under the law. Medicare, the president is saying we're going to preserve the benefits for people who have played into Medicare, and now we need to get busy finding what we can in food stamps and Medicaid under the reconciliation process and get the tax policies in place so you don't have the biggest tax increase in history on the American people. I think that's the right approach. Do we need to find a way to make Social Security solvent by 2033? Yes, it will be insolvent by 2033. Do we need to find a way to make health care prices go down so that Medicare can actually be there for seniors? Yes, because right now it's exploding off the charts. The costs are unbearable for the average American family that's a working class family that's got insurance or doesn't, or they're a senior citizen under Medicare. We've got so much work we need to do, but the priority right now is waste, fraud, and abuse, DOJ doing their job, and yes, some reforms in with respect to Medicaid so that we can actually stop the bleeding under Biden that was funding illegals and funding the able-bodied at the expense of the vulnerable.
So I want to finish here. We're a little tight on time, so briefly, if you don't mind. But the president has been saying, you heard him say there, he doesn't think we're headed for a recession, but he has repeatedly said that there's going to be some short-term pain with his tariff policy. We're obviously looking at the Dow Jones Industrial down 478 points today. It follows another bad day. People's 401ks are not looking as good as they did on Friday. How much short-term pain do you think your constituents are able to bear, considering what they have told us about how they're struggling in this economy?
Well, what we're reaping, unfortunately, is the result of the last 4 years of, I think, failure under the Biden administration. And so we're now having to deal with that. We've got interest rate dilemmas. It's hard for people to afford homes. They can't get and afford a mortgage. Food prices are high. All of the issues that we're now dealing with. And yes, the president's now got to clean up that mess. Remember, Ronald Reagan is now viewed as a pretty strong economic warrior as a president. He inherited a big mess in 81, 82, and it took about 2 years to